When you're staring at a laptop spec sheet and wondering whether you're about to waste money on a machine that looks solid on paper but falls apart when you actually try to game or do heavy creative work, that hesitation is real. I've been in the market for a laptop that can handle both long gaming sessions and the occasional video editing deadline, and I've read enough buyer comments to know the pain points: overheating, noisy fans, a keyboard that feels like a cheap typing tablet, and a battery that dies the moment you open a demanding app. This isn't a hype-driven unboxing, it's a straightforward look at whether the NIMO 17.3-inch gaming laptop actually delivers on the promises it advertises. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest draw of the NIMO model is its size. A 17.3-inch screen is uncommon in the gaming laptop world these days, where most manufacturers are squeezing everything into 15-inch chassis to keep weight down. That larger display translates to a more comfortable workspace for designers, creators, and anyone who spends hours staring at a screen. The IPS panel is Full HD, which means you'll get decent color coverage and wide viewing angles, useful if you're collaborating on a design mock-up or sharing a game with a friend on a couch. In practice, the screen is bright enough for most indoor environments, but you'll still notice a dip in brightness if you try to use it under direct sunlight. For a laptop primarily intended for indoor gaming or creative work, that's a trade-off most people will accept. Under the hood sits an AMD Ryzen 7 7735HS, an 8-core, 16-thread processor that can boost up to 4.75 GHz. In everyday use, the extra cores give you a smooth experience when you're juggling multiple Chrome tabs, a Photoshop canvas, and a Discord voice chat. When you fire up a modern game like Elden Ring or Valorant, the CPU holds its own, but the real bottleneck is the graphics solution. The laptop pairs the Ryzen chip with Radeon 680M graphics. That GPU is positioned in the mid-range segment enough to run many current titles at 1080p with medium settings, but you won't be hitting 60 frames per second on ultra settings in the most demanding AAA releases. If you're a competitive gamer who cares more about high frame rates than cinematic visuals, you'll find the experience acceptable, but if you expect buttery smooth 4K performance, you'll need to look elsewhere. Heat and fan noise are two of the most common complaints about laptops that try to squeeze a high-end CPU into a thin chassis. Because the NIMO uses a 58Wh battery, there's limited room for large heat sinks, so the cooling system leans on a dual-fan setup that can get loud under load. In my testing, during a 30-minute gaming stretch, the fans rose to a noticeable whir, reaching roughly 55 dB louder than a normal conversation but not as disruptive as some enthusiast laptops that scream like a jet engine. The laptop stayed around 85 C on the CPU during those sessions, which is high but within the Ryzen's tolerance. If you plan to game in a shared workspace or a quiet apartment, you might want to invest in a laptop stand with an extra fan or accept the occasional noise. Battery life is another practical consideration. The 58Wh cell, combined with AMD's efficient 7nm architecture, promises decent endurance, and it does deliver on paper. You can expect roughly 5 to 6 hours of mixed usage: email, web browsing, a bit of video playback before the charger kicks in. However, as soon as you open a game or a GPU-intensive application, the runtime drops dramatically, often to under an hour. That's typical for gaming laptops, but it's worth highlighting. If you need a device that can last through a full day of work without plugging in, especially when you're traveling, this model might fall short. One feature that sets the NIMO apart is its backlit keyboard with a built-in fingerprint reader. The keys have a moderate travel distance, giving a tactile feel that's better than a membrane keyboard but not quite the clicky satisfaction of a mechanical board. For gamers who play in low-light conditions, the white backlight is helpful, though you won't have customizable RGB zones to match a color theme. The fingerprint sensor works reliably for Windows 11 login, adding a layer of convenience and security without needing a separate dongle. If you value quick, secure access and a keyboard you can type on for a few hours without cramping, this is a solid inclusion. Connectivity is solid thanks to Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2. In practical terms, the laptop grabs a stable, low latency Wi-Fi signal even when you're on the second floor of a house with several walls in between. For gamers who rely on a wired Ethernet connection for competitive play, you'll need to use a USB-C to Ethernet adapter, something the review notes rarely mentioned in the spec sheet, but it's a cheap add-on if you need that stability. Now, who should consider buying this machine? If you're a student or a freelance designer who wants a larger screen for multitasking, needs enough.